عبد الرحمن موسى.
عبد الرحمن موسى.
السلام عليكم دكتور.
السلام ورحمة الله. Hussein is here. Hussein. Ahmad.
I'm here, doctor.
Okay. Ubada. Ibrahim. Okay. Ibrahim. Ibrahim Mufid. Hussein. Please turn off your mic, Shabab, please.
Doctor?
Yes.
There's something I want to ask if it's possible. So we have a conflicting. We have a seminar at 12. Not me.
I've just told Ahmad. I just told to your friend that he will. I will be short. I will end my session before that time, inshallah. So you can go and join the seminar.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. طيب. Can you see my screen, Shabab?
Yes.
Yes, doctor.
Yes.
طيب. A lot of tabs. So just let me just close some of the tabs. طيب. Today's chapter is about what is known as. This is another, let's say, another step for the hacker to do before he can launch an attack is what is known as enumeration. Okay, what we have done so far, what we have done is, let me just try to.
Doctor, we can't see
Yes.
the screen.
I know it now, Shabab. Just because I've just changed the.
Yes.
the
We
screen.
can see it
Okay.
now.
Yes.
So let's say this is the system. Okay, this is your target. Okay, and what we do have, what we did information gathering. Then we did have yes, we did have. Let's say these are. I'm just trying to show like layers. This is say a port. Let's consider that like as a port layer. Then inside it, we let's say we do have inside it for instance operating systems and what we got last time, operating systems, applications for instance. Okay, and you can also have applications, you can have services. Okay, and inside that one, let's pick out this one. We look at, for instance, here, let's consider let's try to put user's account. Okay, now what we did, okay, we did basically after gathering the information, okay, this is our system, and of course on the top here we do have we gathered information. Let's say after gathering information, okay, let's call that steps as information gathering or footprinting as we called it. It's up to you. Okay, so we did our information gathering, we did our footprinting, we discovered, for instance, okay, for instance, that your target is running 192.168.1.0 network. Okay, this is what you got. So what will be, what let's say are going to do as the next step? We said that we are going to do port scanning. We are going to scan for ports. So this is what we did. And we discovered, let's say, for instance, we did found that port XYZ is open, or port, for instance, port 80 is open. So we went deeper and we did our scanning, okay, to try to get, let's say, the name of the operating system running on that, let's say, on that machine. Okay, for the first instance, for the port, we discovered whether, let's say, we do have, when we did, for instance, a map, or you do the ping, you try to decide or to discover whether the machine is alive or not. Once it is alive, you do, let's say, scanning, okay, to try to get the type of operating system running, whether it does have applications, what type of applications are running on that PC, what are the different services running on that PC. Okay, now once we did that, okay, here comes, let's say, the role of, let's leave it here. Here we do have the enumeration phase. What does that mean, enumeration phase? That means once you discovered the type of application or the services running on that PC, you want to go deeper. Okay, you want to go deeper and try to extract the usernames. What are the usernames inside that PC? Also, you can find, for instance, search for files that are shared through the network. So as you can see here, from the perspective of the target system, we started by, let's say, trying to discover, let's say, the range used by your target system, your target organization. Then you try to extract, to discover what are the different PCs that are running. If we say that this is one of the PC that we have discovered, which is our target system, okay, we looked at that PC and searched for the ports that are running, that are open on that PC. Once we got the port open, it's like you are, you did find that open door, and you just put your hand, let's say, you just have a look on that port to discover what types of, you discover that it does have this application, this operating system, okay? And it is not enough for you, because with that information is not enough, and you want to get more information, okay? So what you do, you just go to that PC, for instance, to that application, open that application, and see what is inside it. And what you can find inside it, for instance, whether it is an application or service, you can find user accounts, file sharing, and all the stuff that you can use later for your next step of, let's say, attacking that specific device. And here comes, let's say, the role of enumeration. Okay, the role of enumeration is just try to enumerate. That means try to extract the different types of information you can, okay, from that specific device. Once you know that, let's say, this service is running, or this application is running, and that application has, let's say, some vulnerabilities, and I can exploit that vulnerability to know what are the different usernames, for instance, stored on that machine, okay, included, let's say, the administrator. So this is, in general, let's say, this is a big picture of when we talk about enumeration. Now, before we go to the enumeration, we need to have some, let's say, background, okay, some basic background about, let's say, Windows machines, and let's say how it can, let's say, what are the different types of, let's say, account that can be found, or what is the type of information we can find within a Windows. Okay, for, as you know, for the Windows machine, for instance, for any operating system that belongs to Windows, you can run your machine as a standalone or as a networked machine. Okay, that means you can have your machine on its own without being connected to the network, or your machine can be part of the network. Okay, and when you try to secure the operating system, you need to secure the operating system itself and all the applications, all the software that are running on that machines. Okay, and there are, because of, let's say, Windows has plenty of features. Okay, those features have created or have opened let's say, a hole or to the attacker to exploit the vulnerabilities that are associated with some features that are found within an operating system. You're going to see later some example of that one. Now, the way of the Windows is controlling access, okay, to its, let's say, to the operating system, or to, let's say, to the files, folders, in general within operating system. There is what is known as users and groups. Okay, now whenever you do have user, which are based on, let's say, an account, okay, which is, if you have an account on that Windows, you can access that Windows, you can open, you can access files. Specifically, when we talk about file shares, anyone what is file shares, Shabab? File shares, anyone?
So basically, you have one place. It's like one place where many users can access this.
Yes, you do have any file. So if you are connected, for instance, if you do have Windows machines connected through the network, okay? For instance, I do have a file and I want to share it with you. So what I will do, if you have Windows machines, you can just right-click on the machine, on that file or folder, go to properties, sharing, and you can share it. And you will see that there will be a hand below that folder, for instance, showing that this file is shared by people, and you can specify, for instance, which users can access it and what types of sharing and what people can do while they access that file, and so on. So this is one of, let's say, the services that can be provided, or that is provided by Windows operating system. Okay, and to access now, to be able to access Windows system, as we mentioned, you can access it as a user, or you can set up, let's say, security access to some specific part of the Windows, let's say files and folders, based on the groups. Okay, instead of having or giving individual user access to XYZ file, okay, I will create a group and I will put those users inside the group. Okay, and when I want to assign permission to some specific file, I don't have to do the same job, the same task, assigning permission to 100 users one after another. So what I will do, I will just assign permission to the group where I do have, let's say, inside that group. Okay, inside that group I will have, let's say, users. Okay, let's say this is a group, and inside it you do have, let's say, these are my users. Okay, these are the users. Now instead of assigning individual, let's say, access to users, okay, what I will do, I will just assign permission, okay, to the group itself. Okay, okay, by assigning permission to the group, automatically that permission, okay, will go automatically to all the users. If we didn't have such group, what I have to do, I have to assign permission to this guy, then I will assign it to this guy, and can you see, let's say, the burden that will be on the shoulder of the administrator. Okay, so the best way is to create a group and call it, for instance, XYZ folder group. That means all the permission that is related to that folder or that file will be related to this group. If I want to remove any permission, the same thing. Okay, I will remove it from the group, so everyone will inherit the permission that has been assigned to that group. And this is what you can find, for instance, let's say, the benefit of having a group within the Windows. And whenever now you access, let's say, your machine, your Windows as a user or as a group, you will be given what is known as security identifier. Okay, security identifier is a number. Okay, it's like an ID for a specific user. Okay, ABC user has access to Windows, he will be assigned XYZ SID. Another user is accessing the system, he will be assigned another SID. A group is accessing system, the group has his specific SID, and so on. This is the way how, let's say, Windows works. Now, when you, for instance, as a window or as a user, okay, when you access Windows machine, you can be considered as a local service, network service, system, and current user. Local service, that means you will have a privilege or permission to do some tasks locally on that machines, and with, let's say, restricted access on the network. When you have a network service user, that guy has, let's say, more freedom on the network than on the Windows machine itself. The system is the system itself, the Windows. Okay, let's say we talk about the Windows itself, the operating system itself. And current user is the user that is logged in right now to the Windows machine. Okay, and for each one of them, a process will be created. Okay, when you, for instance, when you log into your Windows machine, a process corresponding to your user account will be created for you. Once you log off from the Windows, that process will be end. Okay, it will end, and it will be killed. So these are, let's say, in general, let's say, the different types of, let's say, access account that can be found within the user. And what you can do within the users or Windows users, okay, if, let's say, you are a standalone device, okay, you have a standalone machine, Windows, all the user accounts that are created on that machine, they will be stored in a local database, which is properly to that machine. Okay, and that local database is called Security Account Manager, or SAM. Okay, now if you are part of the network, okay, let's say you are part of the network, we do have, let's say, we do have a server. Okay, let's say I do have a server, and I do have PCs or users. Okay, let's say I do have many users, okay, that can access your network. This is my server, okay, that does have an active directory. Does anyone know what is Active Directory, guys?
It's the one you're using. It's the user account that you're using. Usually the admin account.
Not your admin account. Okay, when you do have this guy, these PCs, let's say you do have PCs and users. Okay, I do have PCs. This is my network. Okay, let's consider that all these PCs and, let's say, people can be connected to this server. Okay, now the account for this, let's say, for instance, Ali, and I do have here, for instance, Omar. Okay, this account, your Ali account and Omar account, they are stored. Okay, they are stored on this server. And where? They are stored on the Active Directory. It's like a database, okay, within the server. And why it is called server? Because it can manages all the devices, all the objects, whether they are devices or people, that belongs to what is known as a domain. Okay, this is, let's say, this is all these objects are part of what is known as a domain. Sorry. Okay, when we talk about domain, let's say, for instance, psu.edu. Okay, a domain psu.edu is controlled by this server. That means all users, students use account, for instance, at PSU campus, they are stored on that server. And what is the benefit, Shabab, now? To have all those accounts of all users to be stored on one machine.
Easier to manage, maybe?
Easier to manage, yes. What else? For you, for instance, Shabab, when you are at PSU, from which PC you can access to your account? You have access to your account.
All PCs.
Yes, from
Any
all
PC.
PCs in the index.
Barakallahu. From all PCs. Okay. What does that mean? From all PCs. That means
So
your
all the computers
credential.
are connected to the network.
Shared.
That means your credentials, okay, your account, are stored in one place. That means now Ali, when Ali, for instance, goes to a lab, okay, and sorry, goes to a lab and wants to use this PC. Okay, he will just Control Alt Delete, or he switch on that PC, power on that PC, and he will be faced with user account. Please enter your user account and password. Once he provides that credential, okay, automatically those credentials will be sent to the server that is controlling the domain, that is responsible for the whole domain. It will look at the Active Directory, which is, let's say, the database, searches for that username. If it finds it, it looks for the corresponding password. If it is correct, so it will there will be a profile for Ali stored in that machine, and that profile will be sent back to the Windows machine, and you can open and you can see what you have put, for instance, your preferred desktop. Okay, for instance, I just used a nice picture as a background on my, let's say, when I open the Windows. So now each time you want to access your account from whatever the machine you are opening, you will get the same profile, the same picture, the same desktop background. Okay, this is what we call, but is Active Directory. That means your accounts, your profile, instead of being stored locally on a machine, it is stored on the AD or Active Directory. Now, for instance, now if your account is stored here on this local machine, this is what we call, let's say, the local directory, or let's say it is stored on SAM. Okay, when your account has been created, it was created on this machine. It was not created on the server, on the Active Directory within the server. What is meant by that? That means this guy Omar cannot or can only access to his profile only from this device. Why? Because the credentials of Omar are stored only on local machine. They are not on the server. If Omar, for instance, wants to access his account from this machine, he cannot do it, because the credential, Omar's credentials, are not stored in the Active Directory. They don't exist there. They are locally stored on this machine. So we have limited Omar from accessing the network or accessing his account to only that specific machine. Is that clear, Shabab? Can you see the picture for the account?
I have a question.
Yes.
So doesn't that makes it easier to attack, since everything is stored on one server?
Yes, of course. Now it depends what you are attacking. That's why the server is the most, let's say, within the network, is the most, let's say, valuable asset within any organization, because it holds all the key information. If you can access, even for the DNS server, this is, let's say, let's call it user server. You can have another server. For instance, I can have another server within the domain, okay, that I will call it DNS server. Okay, you can have another server, file server, where you put all those shared files. So all those servers are very important part, a very important asset within your organization, and they need more security than other PCs. If someone, for instance, hack or manage to hack this PC, okay, he will just be, only that PC will be affected. But if someone manages to get and hack this server, he will get all the information about the user's account. Even if you have a printers, for instance, okay, if I do have a printers within my my domain, let's say these are printers, even the information about the printers and the management of those printers can be done through the servers. So everything that does exist within your domain will be stored as object, for instance, within the Active Directory. All the permissions to access those objects, whether devices, PCs, printers, anything also will be stored on that server. That means compromising that server will lead to compromise the whole domain, which means all the devices. Okay, Nabil?
Yes, doctor.
Okay. So as we mentioned, the SAM is a database on the local machine that stores, let's say, a user account information, while you do have the Active Directory that can have, let's say, users within the domain controller. Okay, we have already talked about the group. This is an example of the security identifier that can be done for each account, user account, group, or object. Anything has an identifier to be identified, okay, within the operating system. Okay, and it is used only one. It is not reused. For instance, if I access XYZ or Windows machine with Omar account, I will be assigned a specific SID. If someone wants to access that machine with the same name, he will be given a different SID. So I cannot reuse, let's say, the SID that had been given to the genuine Omar with someone who is pretending to be Omar, and he will just provide that SSID that has been used previously. It is not like the way it works. Okay. Another thing within, let's say, Windows that can be exploited, something that is not as NetBIOS. We're going to see later. Let's go to that NetBIOS. Okay, which is known as NetBIOS enumeration. Okay, when we talk about NetBIOS enumeration, is to enumerate the names, because within the machine, okay, within Windows, each machine within Windows has a specific name, okay, which is known as NetBIOS name. Okay, it is 16 ASCII character, okay, a space, a long name that is assigned to any machine or any Windows machine that does exist within, let's say, within the network. And there are some vulnerabilities associated with the NetBIOS that does exist on Windows machine. Okay, here when we talk about vulnerabilities, of course, we're talking about old version of Windows. I think till Windows 7. Okay, this vulnerability exists. Okay, that is related to the NetBIOS. After that, Windows, I think Windows has patched all the Windows versions that just to eliminate such vulnerabilities. But using older version of Windows, you can exploit the vulnerability associated with the NetBIOS, which is NetBIOS name. Okay, you get the name of the machine. By knowing the name of the machine, it is your first step towards just try to, for instance, to list all the services that are running on that machine. You can also extract the user account from that machine. Okay, so this is just to recap about the NetBIOS, where, for instance, that NetBIOS, okay, is using, for instance, 137 UDP port or 138. If you do find, for instance, when you do port scanning and you do find port 139 is open, that port 39 is related to the NetBIOS, because NetBIOS can be run on TCP and it can be on UDP. UDP in port 137, 138, in TCP in port 139. So if you discover that Windows has 139 port open, that means that there is a NetBIOS running there. So you can just try to exploit the vulnerability associated with the NetBIOS. Okay, we will do later. You will see demonstration. Now, when we talk about enumeration, okay, when we say that we want to enumerate a system, that means we want to extract some information from that PC, for instance. What type of information we want to get? Through enumeration, you can get user names, you can get machine names, for instance, okay, through that network. Network resources, let's say if there is whatever device, okay, you do have, for instance, printers, you have routers, anything that can exist within the system, you can get it, you can enumerate it, you can get the information about that device through the enumeration process. You can get shares if there are some files, folders, printers that are shared on the network. you can get the information about those shares, and you can get the services. You can know exactly what are the services running on that machine. Okay, what version of the service running. Sometimes you get the information about the service, but you don't get, let's say, the exact details about that service running on that machine. By doing enumeration, you go deeper to that service and extract, for instance, the version of that service. And as I mentioned, once you know the service version, for instance, you can search for the vulnerabilities associated with such services. Okay, and just for the net BIOS, okay, you can do the enumeration through the net BIOS only within the local area network. You cannot do it remotely. That means if you want to start to exploit such vulnerabilities or vulnerability associated with the net BIOS, you have to be within, let's say, within the local area network, so you can exploit it. As a general for the enumeration, okay, you dig deeper into the target system. You try to uncover some specific information about that system. As I mentioned, you could determine the different types of services and the settings that have been done on those services. So that means you can tune your attack based on the information you will gather from this enumeration phase, okay, because it gives you more information, so you have more flexibility to plan your next step towards attacking some specific machine. Okay, this is what you can get through the information when you enumerate. When you do enumeration, you can go get resources, okay, and shares, network, or let's say local resources, users account, routing table. We're going to see this later, SNMP, DNS, applications, the name of the applications, the version of the Windows, machine names. If there are some settings related to the audit services, you can get them. So you get plenty of information from enumeration phase. Okay, what you can do as a technique for enumeration to extract vital information, you can extract usernames using emails ID. Okay, there are some tools that will extract information related to usernames. Okay, you can extract default passwords if there are some services running on that machine, for instance, and it is running with the default password. You can extract them. Okay, you can brute force directory. Okay, you will have access. You would brute force, for instance, password. You will have a list of passwords or hash password, and you try to crack those let's say passwords or user account. You can extract information about DNS, okay, by using zone transfer, DNS zone transfer, which we have covered in our previous chapter. Extract user groups from Windows, SNMP, which is we're going to see later what is SNMP, and all this information can be used by a hacker, and he can gather that information by just using enumeration, and he will use it later. Port to enumerate, okay, which are worth, as we mentioned, there are 65,532 ports, so we cannot enumerate all the ports. The ports that are, let's say, worth to enumerate, to look at, these are, let's say, some example of port, TCP 53, 135. You can see here 139, which is related to NetBIOS. Okay, we do have SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol, which are on UDP 1S161. Okay, and on the TCP on the port 25, and so on. Okay, for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. So these are worth to enumerate by using those ports. Okay, if they are open, so you can look at inside those ports to enumerate. For instance, if I do find, let's say, port 53 open, I know that port 53 can be used for DNS zone transfer. So I will just use it to try to extract the information, the relevant information from by doing DNS zone transfer and so on. For the NetBIOS, there are many tools that can be done to use or to enumerate the NetBIOS. The basic one, which is, let's say, an utility that comes with Windows, okay, which is the NBT stat. Okay, the NBT stat can be used on the command line, okay, of your Windows machine, and it will just, for instance, if you type nbt stat.exe-a and you specify, for instance, the name, if you know the name of your remote machine, okay, what you can do, you will get all, let's say, from that machine, you will extract the information related to, for instance, the user account existing on your machine, the type of account, whether a single account or the group's name. If there are groups inside that machine, you will have such information. If there are shared file, you will have the name of the shared file. So these are, let's say, worth information that you can just by one command or one utility that comes with Windows, you can at least have some information. Okay, and this is basically because of the net BIOS. Okay, because of the existence of the net BIOS, you can have such let's say information. As I mentioned, there are many plenty of utilities that can be used, okay, to hold, let's say, to list the host, the list of machines that are that does exist on your network, the open port, for instance, whether those ports are active or not, okay, and so on. This is an example which you will do practice. This is the SuperScan utility. When you use SuperScan utility, you will see you will get the net BIOS information. Among it, for instance, if you can see here, we do have a work group. This is information which is related to the net BIOS information. And you do have, for instance, the work group. I do have a group, and this is the code which is related to the net BIOS name. This is the name, okay? As I mentioned, it is a 16 ASCII character. The 16th character is related to the type of, let's say, the information, the type of the object you are accessing. Okay, here, for instance, 00, you have this is a group. This is a unique workstation service. If it is a server, you will have a code of 20, and so on. Okay, this is just for the net BIOS enumeration. Does anyone know what is a simple network management protocol, SNMP? Yes, Shabab? Anyone came across of this protocol? What is management? Network management. When you hear network management, what does that mean?
Maybe managing the traffic of the for the network.
Not the traffic. What else can be managed on the network?
IP assignment. IP assignment.
Let's think about something physical.
Devices, maybe.
Connection.
Yes, devices.
And how everything is connected.
Devices. For instance, within the network, you do have routers. You do have switches. Okay? And as an administrator, I don't have to go. For instance, if you go to, let's say, PSU campus, and you do have, let's say, 10 routers, and those 10 routers are at different locations. As an administrator, okay, it is, say, I don't have to go to physically to each router and do configuration of that router 1, and I have to move on to another location to do some configuration on router 2, and so on. Okay, to make things easy, okay, I can just from my desk, I can remotely access those routers. I can remotely access those switches at different places, and I can do configuration remotely. For instance, through SSH, I can remotely do configuration of those devices without being physically face-to-face. And how that can be achieved? Through what is known as an SMP protocol, or simple network management protocol. Okay, so by using that SNMP, because of that SNMP protocol, okay, there are some vulnerability associated with that SNMP. Okay, let's have a look at, this is how it does work. Okay, let's say, for instance, as a network or administrator or manager, okay, how, let's say, that remote management is done, okay, by installing at the beginning, okay, on the remote device, you will install what is known as an agent It's like, for instance, if you want to control a PC remotely, for instance, like we are doing anyway, like we are doing with our, let's say, any device, you have to install an agent, which is, let's say, a software, okay, on the remote device. And as a manager PC, you have what is known as a SNMP manager, okay, and the other end is called SNMP agent. So you will try to communicate. You will try, for instance, to remotely access that PC. When you try to access that PC remotely, for instance, it will ask you for your credential. What is your username and password? If I want to access for my PC, I want to access a router in order to be able to do some configuration, it will ask me for my username and password. So I have to provide the credential. If it is verified, it will open, let's say, a window for you to be able to do the configuration. Okay, and this is how, in general, an SMP protocol works. Whenever you want to do remote access or remote management to any device, okay, there is what is known an SNMP agent software that is running there, that is predefined with the same configuration. Let's say here I do have the same configuration. Here you do what is known as a table, a message base, okay, where you do have all those credentials that are, so they will be stored locally, okay. And if when I provide username, okay, it will be verified against the local database. If yes, the username and the password are correct, so it will open, let's say, my PC to be remotely managed, or do whatever the configuration on that PC. And one of the problem, okay, in, let's say, in terms of the SNMP, there are two things, or what is known as, let's say, let's consider them as a password. But in, let's say, in the SNMP language, they are called community string, okay, which is in reality password. Okay, there are two types of passwords that can be used when you do, let's say, remotely, or you do remote management. There is what is known as a read community password or read community string, and another one which is known as the read and the write community string. That means if you are, for instance, providing read password, that means what you can do, let's say, you can see the configuration on the other end, okay, and that read community string is a public. That means that it is a public. Anyone can know, let's say, the default. You can search on the net and you can know the default, the different default password or default read community string for router model XYZ. Okay, if you provide, for instance, if I provide the other end with read and write community string, that means I can change and I can edit the configuration on the remote device. Okay, and this read and write community strings are private. And sometimes, okay, sometimes, Shabab, the default read community string is public. The word public. This is the default password. The default password for read community and the write community string is private. So you do have public and you have a private. On some machines and some organizations, they do provide SNMP service, and they didn't change those default password or those default community string, whether it is read or write, or read and write. So as a hacker, as an attacker, you can change. If you discover that there is an SNMP service running on that network, okay, you can try, you say to yourself, maybe they didn't change and they are still using those default community strings, so why not to try to use, let's say, the read community string with, let's say, a public password, or I will use the read and the write so I can remotely access that machine and do the changes I want. Okay, so that means through SNMP you can do SNMP enumeration. You can verify, and there are many tools that will help you to do SNMP enumeration. Okay, which uses, let's say, the SNMP services vulnerability to try to extract information about the remote devices by getting, for instance, the different types of configurations that are set on the remote machine. Okay, Shabab? A null session in some Windows machine, okay? Just let me show you something. Okay. In some machines, there is what is known as a null session. Null session, that means you can access remotely a machine without providing username and password. And you can, for instance, access that machine without providing username and password. Once you get into that machine, you can list all the users existing or stored on that machines, groups, devices that are linked to that machine or to the network, the shares. Okay, you can get even the SID of the users and so on. And this is what is known as a null session. Okay, there is a next session we will do a demonstration on how we can access a machine using a null session. And null session exists on some version of Windows. Okay, not all the Windows have let's say this flow or this vulnerability, but in some machines you can access them by just typing some specific command, and you are inside that machine. You can have a list of users, groups, shares, devices that let's say that does exist on that network or that are connected to that machine. This is what is known as a null session. Is that clear, Shabab? This is for, let's say, for the Windows. For the Linux or Unix machines, there are some utility, there are some tools that can be also used to list the usernames existing on that machines, the different files within the machine. There are plenty of devices, because there are plenty of utilities that are related to the Unix. Okay, whether we are enumerating Windows machine or whether we are enumerating Linux machines, so we can get at the end what we say when we say we are enumerating. That means we can get the list of user account, shares, files, devices connected to that machine. If there are any printer connected to that machine, you will get the name of that printer and so on. And these are, let's say, a part of the information gathering. So once you get the information, you can, for instance, try to plan for your next step within, let's say, to hack, let's say, that machine. Okay, guys?
Yes.
Okay. Let's now quickly, Shabab, if before we end our session, we do have say 8 minutes remaining. Okay. Just please just go to your CH account.
دكتور okay. صار على هذه السي اتش بالنسبه لي
قال لك it is a long process. انا ما بعدين اوري لك الايميل. قالوا ان it is a long process. هما list that has been sent to the EC Council. Okay, they sent it after the registration has I think was closed. معناها انه ولا واحد راح يسجل في الكورس. انت سجلت بعد ما قفلوا الريجستريشن؟
لا سجلت باول اسبوع على طول بعد المحاضره الاولى. يعني بس المحاضره الاولى ما حضرتها، المحاضره الثانيه حضرتها انا.
لا بغض النظر على انك حضرت له ما حضرت، المهم انا حاب اعرف انه اسمك اذا كان مسجل في البدايه او لا، لانه احنا الليست عندما وين سدد انا شيكت على الليست اللي طلعتها انا من الايديوكيت ما كان فيها اسمك.
ايه هو اول يوم دوام، اول يوم دوام كان يوم الاحد.
وانت ما سجلت فيه؟
انا ما كنت مسجل ماده يوم الاحد. ايه بس يوم الاحد بالليل او يعني او يوم الاثنين الصباح سجلت فيها انا الماده.
ايه ولك احنا الليست هذه ارسلناها قبل ما يبدا التدريس. واضح؟ لانه كنا على اساس انه كنا نجهز انفسنا، على اساس كنا على نطمع انه بيرسلوا لنا ايش اسمه الكريدنشال قبل ما نبدا يعني كما بدايه التدريس اصلا، يعني حتى ما نتاخر في اللابات. يعني
الحين ما في احتماليه اني اقدر ادخل؟
مش ما في، لا هم قالوا انه اللونج بياخذ وقت.
مو مشكله ياخذ وقت.
ايه هم قالوا ياخذ، ما قالوا لا، قالوا ياخذ وقت. بس انت شوف من حين لاخر يعني لازم تضغط عليهم شويه. مثلا ارسل رئيس قسم قول له انا عندي مشكله ما اقدر اسوي اللاب وكذا، واضح، لانه هو على خبر يعني العميد، لانه الشخص المسؤول انا مرسل لي ايميل، سوى CC للايميل على العميد ولا رئيس القسم، فهم عارفين المشكله اللي صاير. فهذا ننتظر الاسبوع هذا، اذا ما في من الاسبوع الجاي حاول انك ترسل ايميل مثلا العميد قال انا عندي المشكله الفلانيه، عشان هو ايضا يعني حتى ما يكون البريشر من جهتي بس، حتى يكون البريشر ايضا من جهه ثانيه.
خلاص ما عندك مشكله.
اوكي
يعطيك العافيه.
الله يعافيك. if you go through شباب quickly to enumeration module 4, you click on enumeration, go to labs, and if he ان شاء الله بس نلحق عليه. Did you manage to